All right, looks good. So today we're going to work on just a little bit of the basic exercise sheet. Since last time we did the timing exercises and stuff. So we're just going to play down that stuff real quick just to get a mental warm-up and to cover those things. Then we're going to spend some time with Triplet Diddle and the 8 and 25 and the tag. Most of you are pretty good on all this stuff, but we're just covering it just to make sure our bases are covered. And then we're going to work on the capital spree. So let's dive right in. Let me turn my music over to the basic exercise sheet. Alright, so let's just run this thing down. Let's do A a couple times. We'll do it all a little faster. Let's go with 110. I'm going to stop because I'm not used to wearing shoes with this, so I need to raise my stand up a little bit. Looks like it's basically maxed out. Alright, that should be a little better. Alright, A again. Last time. Gallop. Last time. Alright, so, to review a little bit, the gallop is somewhat of a 4-2-1 grid and then just a continual roll at the end. So notice you've got 4 of right diddle, 4 of left diddle once, and then 2 of right diddle, 2 of left diddle twice, and then 1 of right diddle, 1 left diddle 4 times, and then you go into that roll. So that's the 4-2-1 type aspect all in one line. Okay, let's do 8 on a hand. I need to put this actually on this sheet. 8 on a hand. Okay, and something that I've been noticing on this, and this is coming from the more seasoned players and private lessons and all that good stuff, is an overlift into the first note. So I know that I'm a broken record and you guys have heard me a million times, but the lift aspect, doing the full quarter, is great, but the tendency is when you use that full quarter, you go up way too high. So just think a little bit less about how much motion to use in the full quarter and just do a small amount of motion over that amount of time. So just slow that hand down on the way up and then put way more energy after you actually start playing. Piano. Notice I'm not prepping at this dynamic. Mezzo piano. Mezzo forte. Forte, let's bring the prep back into it. Fortissimo. Now an even louder fortissimo, try to use arm with every stroke. And that's enough of that. Let's go to C, which is 8 on a hand, just with an accent on the first note of each hand. Okay, so again, the goal should be to get as much sound as you can out of the taps without downstroking. So I'm actually having a hard time at this tempo and these dynamics getting my first tap after the accent to sound like the other ones. I'm actually kind of shortening the sound, so loud, soft, and then kind of getting it more intense. You don't want to do that. You want all your taps to sound the same. So figure out how to control that first rebound stroke, and then consistent lift, control, so on and so forth. Much better for me. D, up, 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 up. You don't have to kill these accents. You can bring the height down a little bit. Okay, so talking about this one a little bit, something I've noticed in some lessons recently is once especially we bring the tempo up on things like this where you require that upstroke, at the slow tempos both hands are looking good, the lift is nice, but then at the faster tempos the right hand tends to have still a pretty good motion, but the left hand tends to just go into a lead with the bead only. So you got like a lift, turn, lift, right? So whatever you're doing with one hand as far as how much lift you're getting of the hand, you should also do in the other. One way to work that out is to, again, play this stuff two hands at the same time. And make sure that if you're lifting one hand that the other is actually lifting along with it, and that it's not just turning while this one lifts. Then you can plug that back into the exercise as written and try to work that out one-handed. So let's just play it a couple more times. Just think about whether you're actually lifting both hands equally. Okay, and the last thing that I'll say about the upstroke stuff on this, and the next like one or two, is you want to make sure that that last tap before the accent gets the same sound. So even though you're doing a different type stroke after you play the note, as you play the note, it should be the same. So the sound should not change on that last tap before the accent. Next one. Up, down, 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 up, down. Both hands. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Obviously, the louder you play the accents, the more challenging this is. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Hands separate, start with the right hand. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Left hand. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Last time. Up, down. Next one, F. Right? Do F. Same thing, somewhat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up, down, up, down, up, down, lift, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, lift. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, lift, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, lift. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, lift, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, lift. Good. And some of you might just, want to pause at various spots and do the backup 15 seconds button or whatever, and play it again and again, and see if you can actually say those words with me as you're doing it, the lift, down, all that good stuff. It helps me, and I haven't started doing that until I started teaching West Springfield Battery and the private lessons with you guys, but I've noticed that it really does help my own mental approach to what I'm thinking about with these. So if you can, spend some time and work in actually saying what you're doing, and I think that'll just add a little bit more connection between, the brain and the muscles and hands and stuff. All good so far, Jared? Only got one thumbs up, so... or one thumb up.
There's some latency on my computer, so I'm seeing if I can freeze some stuff up.
Okay. Keep it down, okay? Okay. All right, let's move on to G. So I'm kind of thinking G. I will likely never ask any of you to play this any softer than forte. This one is like an energy, trying to get both hands in. It's like basically 8 on a hand, but just continuous and on both hands. So want to hear a lot of energy in this one, and making sure that you're not getting a, you know, or any kind of pulses, that kind of stuff. So I try to work it out where you're literally just playing like pretty much as loud as you can. So that way you shouldn't even be able to pulse. And something that I've noticed working with some of you is you'll get through the whole thing pretty loud, but then the last note is even louder. And if you're playing the whole thing as loud as you can really play, then you shouldn't be able to play the last note louder than the others. So that's just, you know, food for thought. But you know, yeah, we're trying to play this one loud and ensuring that both hands are the same volume regardless of which hand is leading, and that you get a nice double prep. This is the first one that we've really got a serious like close proximity of the hands in terms of the lift. You kind of get that in A and B, but you really get it here because it's a 16th note space. So just remember, if you're starting with the right hand, the right ever so slightly leads the left, and then vice versa when you go the other way. So something to look out for with those lifts is I've noticed some of you going 1, 2, 3, 4, and having it be like a herky-jerky motion, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, some kind of like weird. All you're doing is a normal lift. You're just lifting the left immediately after the right, because that's how you play. So anyway, let's try this one, 110. Aim for forte, fortissimo, whatever you can get out. Just play it as loud as you can without sacrificing your technique. That down. Last 2 notes are downstrokes. Off the left. Okay. Another thing to note, when we're up at fortissimo, the beads should be separated by about a stick's length. So if you're playing and you realize that your beads are close together up top, then you need to either, if you're a snare drummer, you need to think about that right hand staying down and turning, as opposed to just lifting or knocking the door. And if you're a tenor drummer, then you're probably doing this straight line thing from the elbow to the bead, or that's if your elbows are like out, or which you shouldn't be doing, or the other thing is that your hands are just too close, even if your like elbows are relaxed. So make sure that you got relaxed elbows, but also that your hands aren't super close. Your hands should be at about the hip, you know, width apart. So that should be, you know, about a stick length. So that way when your hands turn and your beads come up, you should have about a stick length in between the beads. Off the right, G. Left. Last time. Cool. So, you know, just we're not going to play that again, but something that some of you might be doing is lifting the first hand straight up, and then once you start playing, you're rebounding out. So like a, yeah, there's a difference in the bead. So, you know, make sure if you're a tenor drummer, you're not doing where you then separate the beads, but that you just start with what you're going to continue for the rest of the exercise. So that one's also an energy thing, and the fact that the first count has to be in time. So you don't want to like play the metronome game, snake game, where you're going in and out of phase with the tempo. So this one's actually really hard to do correctly. And it wouldn't be a good video if I didn't make a terrible attempt at H. I'm kind of just waiting for a year where we actually get to this one a little bit more to get better at it myself. So let's try it. H, I think I did 80 beats a minute last time. Let's try it at 100. All right, coffee, help me out. Low grace notes. Much better. Okay, so we're going to play that one more time. Something that I did the first time that I fixed. The second time was I rushed the quarter note triplet, quote unquote, figure coming out of the eighth notes flams. The second time it was a lot better. In the half note triplets, or like bars 3 and 4, you do want there to be a slight pause between the note and the next lift. So in H, obviously you've got a quarter note pause, like one pause, or one lift, one, right? That's pretty obvious. And then in bar 5 and 6, it's pretty obvious that that is immediate lift after you play. So just play lift, play lift, play left, play lift. Okay, but in bar 3 and 4, there's going to be a slight pause in between the note and the lift, but not a big one. So see how I'm not immediately lifting, but I'm also not lifting at the last second. So just something to look out for on the quarter note, on the half note triplets. Another thing that you want to look out for, especially hopefully everybody's practicing in front of a mirror, but when you do these lifts on flams, it's kind of two separate worlds. One of those kind of things where this is like a big motion, big lift, but this one is just super small. So as you work on the preps to play the notes, make sure that you're not also starting to lift that grace note hand with the other lifted hand. So it's two opposite things. One big slow motion, and then one small at the very last second you're placing that that grace note in. All right, let's try it again. Alright, cool. Let's take a quick break just to transition to the next sheet of music. Oh, wait. Need to look at the rudiment sheet. I think we left off at Paradiddles last time. So let's finish up this sheet real quick. We have Paradiddles. Okay, so let's go to double Paradiddles. Alright, so I'm just going to break down the rest of these rudiments real quick. I think most of you know that there are those that think the only way to play a double paradiddle is with 2 accents. And then there are others that argue the only way to play a double paradiddle is with 1 accent. Right? I don't really care. I think we all kind of know what a double paradiddle is just based off of the sticking, so you can call one or the other a variation of a double paradiddle. I'm just saying all that so that you all are aware that you may come across another drummer that when you say something about a double paradiddle, they might say, oh, well, that's not a double paradiddle. So I choose to not even engage in the argument with them, you know, but whatever. So you can play double paradiddles a bunch of different ways. You can do 2 accents with like a triplet pattern. Right? Or a combination of all those, or accent the first 2 notes. Whatever. So, anyway, let's just play them the way that we play them, which is one way of playing them. It is not the right way of playing it. So, just so we're clear there. Double paradiddles. Lift, 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 lift. Okay, so one thing I am pretty particular about with my students, and therefore you guys, is that there's a strong accent presence on the accents, and then the rest are taps. So a pet peeve is when anybody says that this is a double paradiddle. That's like one of the only times that I would just say, like, yeah, you're playing a double paradiddle sticking, but you're not playing a double paradiddle. So that's probably the only like right versus wrong thing that I hold in that rudiment as far as an argument standpoint. So, all right, Flam, we just kind of played some, but why not? So there are kind of 2 ways to do this one. Since we're not metric, we're not doing anything to a met. There's no need to meter out the lift, so you can either do it with a pause in between the lift, or you can lift immediately. So I'm going to do the lift immediately because we just did one with pauses in it in the exercise. Okay. So, again, I'm not trying to burn any of these, so I know it's probably hard for some of you to stay on with me and play along, and that's fine, but kind of like I'm trying to reach a point at the peak that I would have the expectation that anybody that plays on the snare tenor line here before they leave, like to go to college or whatever, that you're at least able to play it that fast. So if you're not able to in a controlled fashion play as fast as I'm getting some of these too, then I'm just kind of laying out the gauntlet. I think that that should be your like minimum standard to leave high school to play. So Flam accent. Okay. Flam Paradiddle. Some people call these Flamadiddles. Whatever. Okay. So I'm going to break right now and do one of the quiz questions. Jared, you don't have to answer any of these because I know you're right here. But the family thing that was happening is Maddie's grandmother has kind of been just in and out of the hospital recently. And she had another little episode and is in the hospital, but it looks like she's going to be released today. So we kind of just went over to Maddie's parents on Friday, spent the night so that we could be around just in case they needed any help or, you know, whatever. So it ended up being a really good time. We like cut down a tree and chopped some wood and all that good stuff. So I'm pretty tired, but it was time well spent. So anyway, things are looking good for, we call her Grammy. Things are looking good for Grammy, but it's kind of just like we don't know how long that's going to last or whatever. So anyway, there we go. So it's Maddie's grandmother, aka Grammy, is who what the family situation was about. Flam Taps. Big accent, medium tap, low grace note. 3 different dynamic levels in this one. For as long as you can control those heights, do that. And it should turn into a natural decay over time. So your grace note will start to come up at the higher speeds. And you should soften your hands. So don't worry about playing that accent really big, or like with a fast stick. It's just a big motion with a relatively slow stick. You should feel very relaxed when you play Flam Taps. I actually haven't broken Flam Taps down since I've changed a lot about my philosophy of how to play the Flam Tap. So I'd say that was a pretty poor breakdown. What you want to do is immediately after playing the grace note, you want to lift for that next accent. Right? Something that I had built in prior was to wait until lift, 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 lift. Okay, so I've got some things to change in that rudiment about how I just want to specifically play it, and especially working from slow back, or from fast back to slow, I have some work to do. So tap flam. Most people do not call this rudiment a tap flam. Most people call it an inverted flam tap. So I don't care what you call it, but I'm just letting you know. We will start with the flam. So in that case, I think it would be called an inverted flam tap. If you start with the tap, then you would call it a tap flam. This originated in Switzerland. This is another quiz question. This originated in Switzerland. There it's called the double, or the double, and it has a rhythmic difference between slow, medium, and fast. At the slow and fast tempos, it's all very straightforward rhythm. In the medium, they call it the march tempos, it has like kind of a swing to it. So I'll do a quick version of that. Right, so I'm sure you heard the weird, like, kind of five-lip phrasing thing. Jut, da jut, da jut, da jut, da jut, da jut, da jut. That's just kind of how they play them in actual musical context. So, anyway, here's the inverted flam tap now. So, word to the wise for auditions and things like that, where you're going to be playing these rudiments, the slower you start, the faster your top tempo is going to seem. So, when you go in to do an audition, don't just start at like a medium. So then that top tempo is not going to seem, you know, start out. And every time you break these rudiments down, start real slow, because the whole purpose of the rudiment breakdown is that you are in complete control every single time you play it. So you should spend like 2% of your time on a rudiment, working your rudiments at that tempo where you're just on the verge, like you're about to lose it, whatever. The way that you really want to push and get your hands faster is by staying at the top part of your comfort zone. So, you know, you don't really want to leave your comfort zone hardly at all when you practice this rudiment stuff, because as you stay in your comfort zone longer, your comfort zone will grow. Probably on the slow end as well, but also on the large end, because you're in control and you're making those proper connections with your brain. If you're always on the verge and you're just like trying to push, that's like a race car that's just like spinning there at the start. That's just, zzz, my wheels are going, but I'm not going anywhere. You'll just stay there. So if I have one huge statement to make about all of practice and everything, it's to keep yourself in a no-fail scenario. Don't push yourself beyond what you should be doing and what you can actually like get traction on and move forward. All right, anything on what we've covered so far, Jared? Sweet. Can I just hear your voice? Okay, so I'm thinking we should get through Triplet Diddle pretty quickly. All of you, I think I only don't teach Ethan and Lance, Ethan and Jared, and I know that they've already played all of this before, so everybody else is working on all these 8 and 25 variations and all that, and part of that is because the variations that you're working on are elsewhere in this exercise. So Jared and Ethan, what I mean by the variations, I've been having the private students, when they play 8 and 25, instead of only it being roll, they'll do 24 counts of like tap drags or tap roughs or tap fives, right hand buzz only, left hand buzz only, buzz roll, tap roll, tap buzz, that kind of stuff. So if you can do all that, then you can pretty much just plug it into the rest of the exercise. So this is the first year that West Springfield is finally going to play what I think is like the full Triplet Diddle exercise. So we kind of started like 4 years ago and got through like maybe the first half of the first page or something. The next year we added a little bit more of the actual Triplet Diddle. Last year we learned the tag, and then at some point in there we did 8 and 25 as well. I think maybe last year. So last year was like super close, but now it's all just like in this thing. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So let's just take the first line. To address some of the tenor voicings, it's pretty intuitive. This round of these triplets I think it was originally like a Blue Devils thing back in the early 90s. It's like a 7 pattern. Yeah, so the 7 pattern actually starts on the 3rd triplet of the first count. So those first 2 don't really count, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. right? But you're just doing it over triplets, so it can get kind of weird. So anyway, that's all the hands are doing, is just going back and forth, and you play 3 notes every time you get to the 3rd and the 4th drum. You'll want to spend some time kind of breaking that round down just to figure out how it lines up with the counts, because it comes back on line 3, but you're actually playing diddles with it. So that can be kind of weird. So especially Grant, you'll want to spend some time marking time slowly, figuring out the round, and then adding the diddles. Okay, so I digress. Let's just do the first line. It is 2 bars of triplets and then 2 bars of right hand diddles. Maybe today will just be a 110 kind of day. Okay, so delving in a little bit, just when you play this, spend some time without earphones in, without any metronome going on, nothing. Focus only on the sound you're making, and if you're getting this happening, where those diddles are like louder than the taps, what you'll actually want to do is spend more time. First, ensure that you're not lifting higher than tap height for the diddles, so that it's not, right? So once you get them to the same level, if it's still louder, then you'll want to increase the sound of the non-diddle note. And that's kind of where we go back to like 8 on a hand, where we're playing it softly, but moving the stick quickly, but not downstroking. So you don't want to solve that problem by downstroking the non-diddle hand like that. You want to move the stick faster, but you also want to quickly rebound it to that tap height. So you do want a totally even sound, regardless of whether it's a diddle or not, and it should be down low. The highest that I'll probably ask you all to play, I'm not going to say that because we might do some slow work with it, but especially when we're doing it a little quicker, I'll just have you guys play this first part down low. So let's do A again, and just really pay attention to the volume that you're getting from both hands. Okay, and that's what 8 and 25 is really good for, is you set a sound up, and then once you start playing diddles, if you hear where it immediately gets louder, then you know you obviously need to work on getting your taps more intense, moving the stick faster. Okay, so in the next 2 bars, all you do is add left hand diddles in between those. So you keep the right hand motion, timing, everything, and you add left hand diddles. So the way the whole A section of this works is just keeping one thing constant. So from the first 2 measures to the second 2 measures, the left hand stays constant, and you add right diddles. The next 2 measures, the right hand stays constant, and you add left diddles. And then the next thing that stays constant is the left hand, because you take away the right diddles. And then the next thing is the left hand stays constant, and you add the right diddles. But notice that in bar 9, it starts with a tap and not a diddle. So you're trading back and forth. Your left hand is the anchor, and then the right hand, and then the left hand and the right hand. So let's play the first 6 bars. So now we're just adding 2. where you add that left hand diddle in. Okay, and the tenor rounds for this part are super easy, so I don't even need to talk about them. But notice that in bar 3, it is on drum 1, and in bar 5, it's also 1, but then in bar 6, it goes with the shot drum. So just don't confuse those. They look kind of similar on the page, drum 1 and the shot drum, so just make sure that you're actually playing on the appropriate drum. Yeah, let's add the next 2 bars. So then we're going to the part where you take away the right hand diddles and you leave the left hands going. Okay. So something you also might want to look out for is when you're only playing right hand doubles, they tend to be open. And then the left hand diddles tend to be tight. So you want to make sure that you're hearing a horse gallop kind of through the whole thing. Something like that kind of rhythm is when you've got a right or left hand diddle, what you should be aiming for. So don't round it out or overly square it off. Make real sharp rhythms. Okay, let's add the next 2 bars. So then you're just adding some right hand doubles in, but making sure that on the downbeat of 9 that you're not playing a diddle there. That should be a tap. It's called a tap roll. A to B. Right, and then we actually have an accent there. So while we're on it, and we haven't left the first section yet, this is a perfect tempo I think that all of you can do and focus on your technique. A little bit faster, some of you might start having some issues physically, but this tempo, you should have perfect technique. So, you know, if you're a snare drummer, make sure you're not reverting to like elbow out and or straight line from elbow to bead. You want this angle right here. It doesn't have to be extreme, but it does need to be there. So when you're doing these diddles, you're not only knocking, but you're also turning the hand, just like the left hand turns. So you want to feel somewhat of a turn and keep that fulcrum in the middle to back of the hand instead of coming up front to play these doubles. All right, starting at B, let's just take 2 bars. So you've got basically flam accents without the flam for a bar, and then you've got tap drags. Yeah, pretty simple. Next, you've got tap roughs. So let's add 1 bar. Yeah. So the roughs are going to seem like they are more open than they are. So the tap drags will seem like the diddle is tight, and the roughs, it's going to sound to you like the diddle is open. But don't err on the side of 2 open, because then the tap roughs turn into paradiddles, right? Right, it's kind of a paradiddle sticking. So don't mess with the rhythm that much. But the big thing is just keep your hands in triplets and play accurate diddles, and it should come out even if it sounds a little tight or loose. Okay, so now let's add 1 bar of the tap 5s, and we'll probably play this like 4 times just to kind of get especially the new folks on to snare and tenor on board. Before we do that, quick note from bar 13 to 14, don't take out that last left diddle there. Some people, you know, you want to make sure that rough leads into the tap 5s. Okay, so now we've got, next is tap 10-stroke rolls. Okay, so you got the tap and then a series of 10-stroke rolls. Okay, so let's just play that bar about 4 times. Take out the diddles first. No diddles, just the next bar. Now lower the accent height. Add diddles on the second half. Add all diddles. Okay, so the tendency here can be to sneak into the first left diddle and turn it into a slurred roll. Right, where you make all the rhythms kind of the same. But you want to keep the motion from the tap 5s that precede it and don't come in early with the left hand. Okay, so let's do both of those bars together now. Which brings me to a point that I should have made earlier. When you play the tap 5s, don't come in early with the diddles on the tap 5, slurring it. So to slur, this is another quiz. To slur means to like take a squarish rhythm and mess with the space of it so that it rounds the rhythm out and equalizes the space between all the notes. So instead of having 8ths and some 16ths, it will turn those into like a triplet, 5-let-ish, whatever. So don't turn these tap 5s into 5-lets. They need to stay in triplet form. So we'll do the tap 5s into the tap 10s. Okay. The next bar, add it. So it's just a long tap roll. The only difference between it and bar 9 is tenors, the voicing obviously, but rhythmically or whatnot, it just has an accent on the beginning instead of a tap. So play tap 5s, tap 10s, and that tap roll there. Okay, let's play all of B. Do not release with a accent like I just did. An accent. Make sure we're molaring the left accents. And then with a tap there. Okay, now let's play A, just to review. Sorry, I know I just did A and B, my bad. I was thinking about some other stuff while I was playing. Alright, let's take a quick drink of water or Gatorade or cream soda or coffee or whatever you're drinking. Cold coffee. Why would you think that I wanted cold coffee? Well, I asked if you wanted to drink something cold, and you said you wanted coffee. Little The Office reference there for you. Alright, so I need to write down these quiz questions. I know there was the Grammy slur. What was the other? Was it the where the tap flam came from and what it's called? So Switzerland. Double. You can just spell double, D-U-B-L-E. I think there's like an umlaut or something over something. The E has the little like apostrophe thing over it or something. But alrighty. C. Alright, so C is just 8 and 25. Tenors, you're just starting with working your way back up the drums from where you just went down the drums to the shot drum. So let's just play C down. Tap height. Cool. Alright, so just remember to count to 6 in terms of 6 bars, or you might want to count to 24 if you're counting each count, but that's the secret there. Just don't end 8 and 25 early or late. That was a pretty bad tendency last year when we did that, so if you all could just make yourselves the promise right now that you're going to actually focus and count the number of counts and not play late or end early, then that will save us so much time and energy in rehearsal. Just say, well, let's play it again to make sure we're all ending at the same place. Like, this would be a wonderful year to take advantage of this time that you all have to individually practice, and all that good stuff. So, but I know that y'all are loaded up with a bunch of other stuff as well, so it's all priorities. I get it. Anyway, the next part, I don't really want to take a whole lot of time breaking down, because whether you played snare or bass last year, it's the same. Actually, it is not, because the bass part was different last year than the snare and tenor part. But I think that it's pretty intuitive. Dum da dum da dum da right. So much easier than the bass part, and then the same thing off the left. So the right hand for the tenors is just staying over here on the right side, and then next, you're staying over here on the left side, and then you do a little back and forth between 1 and 3, 2 and 4, and then you do a real slow triplet roll down and up the drums, and then you got that weird invert thing at the end. So let's start on that last bar that you actually play. Dot to jot to jot to jot to jot. And we'll slow it down. Let's say, this is unofficial, but in this last bar, don't try to keep your tap real low this year. So instead of doing that whole fortissimo and then the accent height turns into mezzo forte and you play a low tap, just think low tap, mezzo forte, and bring that up 2 dynamic levels. So maybe like mezzo forte, fortissimo, and just try to really go for it on the last bars. But this whole last section is just meant to stretch your hands back out from playing fast rolls. So that last bar can get a little, we can allow it to be a little bombastic, just because I put the molar stuff in there to stretch the hands out even more. So let's play the last bar there, and I'm slowing the tempo down just a little bit. Right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. See, inverted motion there. Right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. And as far as what the other hand is doing, I think we can define that a little bit when we get together. For now, to give you something to aim for, just control the hand down in between. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, on into playing position. Don't float it like, don't float it in between. It may end up turning into like a nebulous thing. I don't care what y'all do as long as you move together and you look the same. So put that as maybe a note in your music to like bring up once we actually rehearse in person. I'll probably take a poll and just kind of see how everybody's feeling. I have a feeling most of you are going to want to just control it down though, and I'm fine with that. So add the bar before it. So right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. So it's just a tap double stroke roll. I think it's a tap 11. And it's all loud, and do not control the hand down in between on this. You, everything is dot, 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 dot. Everything's up. So that one and the next bar. Okay, and on talking about the last bar, if some of you could start practicing this thing a little faster and just let me know motion-wise what makes sense. It might make sense to not control it and to float it to medium, especially at the higher tempos. So however we're going to do it fast is how we need to do it slow. So Jared, some of you guys just figure out whether you want to keep the hand down or not. Okay, back up 2 bars and only play those 2 bars. Da, 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 da. Lift. Lift. Sorry. And so motion-wise, we'll say that last left there that we just played, control it down, and then when you play that downbeat right hand, let that slingshot your left hand up. So right, 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 left, 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 and then down while you're lifting the next right. So. And then as soon as you hit that right, that slingshots your left up. So picture like somebody's on a trampoline and you jump on the trampoline, that boom, you know, that's what we're looking for. Boom. So. Sweet. So let's do that together in the last line here. Sweet. Okay, let's do the first line of D. So back up 4 bars and only play those 4 bars. Leave it down longer. Don't crescendo too fast. Halfway, you should be about mezzo forte. Mezzo forte. Mezzo forte. Go all the way to the end this time. D to the end. Sweet. Okay, let's do A and B, and then we'll put this whole thing together. So A and B together, just to review. We'll bump up the tempo again. Okay, hopefully that was a nice little review there. So now we'll play the whole thing down. So if you messed something up just now, try and catch it on this run. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sweet. And on the last bar, mezzo forte doesn't have to be the tap height. It might be more comfortable to play a lower tap, but my main point is it can be a little beefier than it was last year. We don't have to keep it super small into mezzo forte. So if we end up settling into a different dynamic than what I just said there, then I'm fine with it. As I said, I don't care what we're doing as long as the goal is to relax at the end and you're all doing the same thing. That might shock some of you. Scott, Coach is a control freak. So, all right, capital spree. Big thing in capital spree is keep the taps down. Keep the grace notes down. Big shocker there, right? So analyzing this thing, the first bar of each line is just Flam accents. So the same thing. And then we just start messing with stuff. So the first line you got... these are called cheeses, so they are cheesed Flam accents. The cheese is the Flam with the double on it. Notice in the first bar that you got full accents on each downbeat, and on the cheeses you've got tenutos. So I just want a light hand touch. Don't play the cheeses with a heavy hand. And the tendency when you do these cheeses is going to be to play the double too tight. So by softening the hand and playing it a little lower stick height, it will change the sound. You're not going to keep that same accent sound, but your rhythm should be a lot better. So we're kind of just writing so that you have a better opportunity to play cleanly together. So boom. Making sure that when you play those doubles, that rhythm is there. Okay. Moving to the next line, same thing, but with flam drags. Now, on these flam drags, we are keeping the accent, so it doesn't get softer in the second bar of B. It's self-explanatory. I think we're all kind of working flan drags right now in order to get through drag rough mix-up. And then in C, the second line of C does come back down because you've got those cheeses again. But in this case, they are a cheese in a context of a Flam 5-stroke roll. Flam 5s. So those are just tenutoed. All right, so let's take A, B, and C. And I just wanted to point out that approach difference between full accents and the tenutos with a light hand. And focus on the rhythm that you're making. Slow this down a little bit. Sorry. So the tendency will be, when you do these tenutoed measures, to bring the taps up. You're going to want to So make sure you're not doing that. The taps still need to stay at tap height, and then the tenuto is just a smaller accent level. So you got like 4 different levels going on right now. I've got a grace note, a tap height, a tenuto height, and an accent height. Okay, something else to point out is when you come out of the measures with the tenutos, the downbeat of the next bar is a full accent. So don't, right, it should be tenuto, 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 accent. Okay, so let's play A, B, and C a couple more times just to think about all that. Sorry, start over again for me. Maybe I'll get it right this time. Cool. So obviously, this might need to be said, I don't know, but I base some of the warm-ups that we do in the fall around what's going to be in the fall show. So this is kind of a new concept of working some of these things into your fall stuff. So this should be kind of a warning that we are going to play some of these type figures in the show. So yeah, you should get this to a pretty good tempo. I'd say A through A, B, and C, you should be able to play faster than the rest of it. So I would love if y'all could play A through C somewhere up to near 160. I'm sure some of you can already play it faster than that. For some of you, it's going to be a real challenge to play it that fast. So in order to do drag rough mix-up, just to physically get through it, you would have to play it at 133 anyway. So by the end of the summer, you should be clocking 160 plus on A through C. The rest of it should be slower because of how the mechanics are going to work. So next, D. All right, so you've got same first bar and then, so I do want there to be a float from the first to the third note of the measure. Float. Okay, don't hold the hand down in between those. And then make sure that you're sticking wise playing a Flam accent on beat 2 and 4, and that you're not changing it to add some kind of a Swiss triplet or a weird left hand double thing or something. So right, 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 left, 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 right, left, and then so you're back on the right hand. Let's just play D. Okay, a lot of you are going to have to slow it down and break that down and figure it out before you can even play along with me doing that. Okay, but those of you that want to reference this video again, I'm just going to play it like 3 times so you can come back and practice to it. This is at 90 beats a minute. Making sure you get that float. float, float. Alright, so E is kind of the same thing, but we're moving where the float is and where the accent is. So if you'll kind of notice on the second bar of E, you still have that thing, but it starts on the second note of the bar and therefore starts with the left hand. Okay, so we want the float in the same type of rhythmic context. Float. Okay. Float, float, and then that last right flam is also a float because you're floating into the accent of the downbeat of F. Float, float, float. Okay. So let's try this one. Well, I'll play it like 4 times in a row. Okay, so the important thing is, now that we're starting to really mess with timing here, your concept of where the downbeat is has to be solid. So once you get this in your hands, as soon as you can, really start practicing with a met and ensuring that you keep this. Right, the listener listening to this should be kind of confused, like, wait, whoa, where is the downbeat? I thought it was this, but they just played. But you, as the performer, should know where the downbeat is and stay consistent. Okay, so same kind of idea. We're taking that chut thing and we're just shifting it over one more count. And it starts on a different part. So you actually start with the double accent instead of the single accent. So you don't float anything in F until the first right hand flam. So that is the only float in line F. Let's try it. I'll do it 4 times in a row. This, if you're watching what I'm doing right now in terms of playing it 4 times in a row, is so that you can break it down and then come back and watch this and play it along with me. I'm not breaking it down and spoon feeding it to you note by note or any of that stuff. I'm just giving you a practice tool that you can come back to if you have not already figured this out. F. Sorry. Maybe I should break it down. Again. Okay, so now I can actually play it. Something else I want to point out is the tenuto on the last flam of F. Don't play that as a full accent because it's a patafla-fla going into G. And a truly phrased patafla-fla, in my opinion, is, and it's not the only right way to do it, but when you have a patafla-fla, the doubled flam, the first flam should be a little lower than the next flam. So instead of right, soft into loud. So now I'm going to give you 4 full reps of F, hopefully not making a mistake. Before we go to the next section, let's play D, E, and F together. So I think in this context, you'll start to really understand and hear how they relate to each other if what I said earlier didn't make sense to you about the accent patterns and the shift over and everything. By the way, tenors, I hope you have fun with this. I tried to leave it as simple as I could in terms of the voicing, but you know, you'll have some different crossover things that'll be pretty fun for you. So what you'll want to do before you work all that out is work out just the snare part without the crossovers, and then slowly figure out the crossovers and everything. But the purpose of us doing all these videos and why I started with the more difficult things is to give you time from now to band camp for everybody to figure this stuff out. So again, broken record, I know, but please don't be that person that shows up and can't play through this stuff. Okay. D through F. Alright, so there we go. Excuse me. Dang. Alright, G and H, pretty simple. First couple, the first bar of each line is the same flam accent, and then you've got flam taps and then inverted flam taps. I think all of you can play quarter note triplets and all that stuff, so that's how the accent pattern lines up. Notice in the flam taps that the tap of the flam tap is a tenuto, and notice that the inverts, the tap of the inverts is not a tenuto, it is a tap. So they should really be called flam tenutos, I guess, instead of flam taps. That's your next quiz. What should the rudiment in the second bar of G in capital spree be? Flam tenutos. But it's really just a joke. You should just call those flam taps. But for the quiz answers, it's flam tenutos. Alright, so let's do G and H together, just to save time. Ooh, yeah, good catch, Coach. In H, the inverts, the accents are tenutos instead. So just because of that inverted motion, they're going to come out as louder anyway. So with the flam accents, you've got that soft hand idea, and you're letting the taps get kind of wild. And then the inverts, that first flam is a full accent, but then they turn into tenutos. Even the last note. Okay, so don't play a bunch of tenutos and then the last note play a really loud or a rim shot or anything like that. It just ends at the same level. So H, the inflections should sound the same. So even though the stick height is only coming up to halfway, it should sound just like the accents. Right, so you'll need to put a little more umph into those upstrokes. All right, let's do G and H. Then we'll go and do D through H, and then we'll do the whole thing. G and H. Okay, D through H. And the whole thing. The faster you play this, the more natural it will be to allow those inflections in G and H to do their thing. This tempo, it's kind of contrived, like you're having to force that stuff, but a little faster and the inflections should just come out naturally. A through H, whole thing. Okay, a little faster. Sorry. A little faster. And a little faster. Yeah, I gotta do that one again. A little mental thing for me. See if I can get it. Yay! Awesome. Any questions, Jared? We good?
No questions.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, good to see you, Jared. Everybody else, I hope you're doing well. And get to practicing, figure this stuff out. Looking forward to seeing you all throw down. By the way, the bass book this year is like pretty difficult. So it would behoove you, even snare and tenor players, to go and check out their music. Learn some of their parts just to see how it all kind of fits in. And you're more than welcome to watch the bass drum videos that we do in the weeks in between these. It's challenging to me, some of the timing stuff that's going on. So if you're into that kind of stuff and you just want to see how it all fits in a little bit better, then more power to you. So anyway, take care, and I'll see you all on the flippity flip. See you, Jared.